everybody. We'll get started now. So welcome to the January meeting of the Hubbard County Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment. I'll start off by reading the meeting procedure to you, and then we'll get on with the business of the evening. So starting off, all persons in attendance at Planning Commission Board of Adjustment meetings are expected to comply with the following meeting procedure. Thank you in advance for helping make this a manageable meeting. Copies of agenda item materials are available for public viewing on the table located at the back of the meeting room. These materials are not to leave the table so that others in attendance may also view them. Please turn phones to vibrate or off during the meeting and conduct any sidebar conversations outside of the meeting room. Interruption or other interference with the orderly conduct of the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment meeting will not be allowed. Defamatory or abusive remarks are always out of order. Disruptive persons will be removed from the meeting. The chair may terminate a speaker's privilege of address if, after being called to order, the speaker persists in improper conduct or remarks. Written material concerning agenda items must be submitted to the Environmental Services Department by 3:30 p.m. on the Wednesday immediately prior to the meeting date. Written materials will not be accepted after this deadline or at the meeting because the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will not have sufficient time to review them prior to the meeting. Such material must state the agenda item for which it is being submitted and the name and address of the submitting party. Planning Commission business is conducted first, followed by the Board of Adjustment business. The chair will call the meeting to order and explain the meeting procedure. The chair will read each agenda item into the record and ask the applicants to come forward to the presenter's table, state his or her name and address for the record, and explain his or her request. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will then discuss the agenda item with the applicant. The chair will then ask for public comment on the agenda item. To facilitate an orderly, efficient meeting, there is a 3-minute speaking time limit per speaker per agenda item unless the chair allows a speaker additional time. The chair may terminate the speaker's privilege of address if, after being called to order, the speaker persists in improper conduct or remarks. When the chair recognizes a speaker, he or she may approach the audience podium and microphone, state his or her full name and address for the record, and write such on the speaker log, and then share his or her comments. The audience podium microphone must be used by the recognized speaker because the meeting is recorded. A member of the public may not donate his or her speaking time to another speaker. The speaker should state his or her comments and address the issue, not the applicants. All comments are to be directed toward the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment. Please do not repeat comments already made by previous speakers. The chair reserves the right to ask a group with similar comments to appoint a spokesperson. If written comments have been submitted to the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment, please do not read them aloud during the meeting, as they are already part of the record and copies thereof have been given to the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment. After everyone wanting to speak on an agenda item has done so, the chair will close the public comment period on the agenda item. No further public comment will be taken after this point. The chair will give the applicant an opportunity to address issues raised during public comment. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will then continue its discussion on the agenda item, and the chair will entertain a motion on it. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment may make a motion to pass, deny, or table the item. Once a motion is made and seconded, the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will develop findings of fact for conditional use permit and variance applications and then vote on the motion. Once a vote is taken on an agenda item, the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment will move on to the next agenda item. Meetings commence at 6 p.m. and continue until all agenda items have been heard or until 10 p.m. No new agenda items shall be considered after 9:45. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment may, at its discretion, continue an item that is on the floor at 10 p.m. Any remaining agenda items shall be continued to another date or time, preferably the immediately following Tuesday at 6 p.m., and no further public notice will be provided for such a meeting continuation. The Planning Commission Board of Adjustment, through the chair, may modify these procedures to a meeting or an agenda item. Okay, so the first order of business, since this is our January meeting, is election of officers. And so we'll be electing a new chair for the coming year. And so I'm going to ask if anybody is ready to make a motion on a new chair.
I'll make a motion to nominate Veronica for a new chair.
This is Mike, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Tim to nominate Veronica as our new chair for this year, and a second by Mike, so we'll take a vote on it. Timothy, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Veronica, how do you vote?
Veronica, I vote aye.
And this is Mark, I vote aye. So we have a new chair now, it's Veronica, and I'm going to pass the gavel on to her for the remainder of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The next one item up is the nomination for vice chair. Does anybody have a nomination?
This is Mike, I'll nominate Ken for vice chair.
And this is Mark, I'll second that motion.
Okay, Mike made a motion to nominate Ken for vice chair. Mark seconded the motion. I'll take a vote. Tim, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
This is Ken, I vote aye.
And Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
And Mark, how do you vote?
This is Mark, I vote aye.
This is Veronica, I vote aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, now the next item is the nomination for secretary. And this is Veronica, I nominate Tim for secretary.
And this is Mark, I'll second that motion.
Okay, there's a nomination made by myself for Tim for secretary. Mark seconded the motion. I'll take a vote. Tim, how do you vote?
I'll abstain.
Ken, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
And Mark, how do you vote?
This is Mark, I vote aye.
Okay. Motion carries with one abstain.
Previously, I should have.
Okay. The next item up on the agenda is the Planning Commission approval of the minutes. Do we have any questions or comments or edits to the Planning Commission minutes for December of 2023?
This is Mike, I'll make the motion that we accept the minutes as written.
Okay.
This is Ken, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mike and a second by Ken for the minutes. Tim, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
Mike, I vote aye.
Mark, how do you vote?
This is Mark, I vote aye.
This is Veronica, I vote aye. Minutes have been cleared 5-0. Okay, there's no old business and there's no new business. So the next item is the Board of Adjustment approval of the minutes. Anybody have any edits to the Board of Adjustment minutes? Or is anybody ready to make a motion?
This is Mike, I make the motion, we accept the minutes as written.
This is Ken, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mike, a second by Ken to accept the December 18th, 2023 Board of Adjustment minutes. Tim, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
This is Mike, I vote aye.
Mark, how do you vote?
This is Mark, I vote aye.
And this is Veronica, I vote aye. Motion is carried. Moving forward, we have old business. Amended variance application 51-V-23 by Brett and Sherry Wyman, part of Government Lot 11, Section 1, Township 145, Range 32, Farden Township on Wolf Lake, a recreational development lake. Parcel 07.01.01600. Applicants are requesting a variance from sections 502.1 and 502.2 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance for a proposed accessory structure to be placed within the 10-foot side lot line setback. Applicants are also requesting a variance from section 904.6 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance to exceed the 25% lot impervious surface area threshold. And just for the record, the application was originally placed on the December 2023 meeting agenda, but prior to that meeting, the application was amended to include a new request to exceed the 25% of lot area impervious surface area threshold. And as this new request was not a part of the original public notice, the application had to be tabled so the amended application could be renoticed. Thus, the application was not acted upon at the December meeting and now placed at the January meeting. And if we have the applicants, can you please come forward to the presenters table? Okay, thank you. If you could please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Brett Wyman, and my physical address is 51185 West Mayberry Drive, Cass Lake.
Thank you.
And Sherry Wyman, 51185 West Mayberry Drive, Cass Lake.
Okay, thank you. And you may proceed with your variance request.
So originally, we had sent in the variance requesting a garage by the size of 36 feet wide by 28 feet deep. And it was originally sent in based on setback from a creek that is to the south of the proposed garage. And I received a letter from the Environmental Services stating that that is not a waterway, considered a waterway, so the variance isn't required. But I did not know that there was a setback of 10 feet from each side of the property line. So that I requested, that was the variance that I requested. And also, I learned at a later date that the variance request of the size of the building was more than 25% of the impervious surface. I didn't know that the road is not considered part that is impervious, so I had to request a variance for more than 25% impervious surface. Also, I was then told that I would need to come up with a water management plan, which I got assistance from Soil and Water, who was out to my property and did an assessment and created a water management plan, which is all of this information is included with my variance, which I've also updated my variance a couple times, amended it, I should say. Part of the reason why I'm going the size I'm going width-wise is based on storage and to utilize the size of the building instead of going the lengthwise. I think that by going wider than deeper, I can utilize the space better as far as a garage. We're not having any living quarters upstairs. Just going to have electricity. There's no sewer there. We have enough of our own space. So that's basically what I'm requesting. I've talked to my neighbors. My sisters are on one side where there's a small existing garage, and my neighbor on the other side, Darren Vatnestall, who's become a very good friend, also doesn't have an issue with less than 10-foot setback.
Okay, thank you. Do any members have any questions at this time or comments on the application?
This is Ken. I want to confirm the footprint is 28 by 36, but with the overhang, it's 30 by 38.
You're correct. Yes, you're correct. Right there.
This is Timothy. On your garage doors, how wide are your garage doors?
10 feet.
They're 10 feet, so you're gonna have, you need that that other 15 feet that's gonna be left over because of storage?
Storage, workbench. I have a pontoon, I have a fishing boat, and I have a 63 Chevy pickup. And we have a 30 by 40 pole barn at our house. We will be selling our house and we'll no longer have that building. And eventually, we're gonna live there part-time. So,
This is Ken.
Go
Can I, one of the thoughts that was proposed is to rotate it 90 degrees so that you could get your 10-foot setback. I was looking at that and then looking at the water retention pond. I think just for information, they're suggesting that the basin be 10 feet from the garage. And if you rotate it, that would put the retention pond within 4 feet of the road. So I'm not so sure that, as much as that would be a simple solution, I'm not so sure you want the retention pond 4 feet from the edge of the road, so.
This is Veronica speaking. You're saying it's gonna be 4 feet from the edge of the road regardless which way the building is positioned?
Yeah, if I got the dimensions right, it's 38 feet from the current garage to the road. If you rotate it, that'll be 30 feet. And the recommendation here is 10 feet from the structure. And the only place I can see the retention pond is in the front of the garage here towards the road. And if you take 10 feet and the retention pond is proposed at 16 feet, if you add those up, you're out at 26 feet. And by rotating the garage, that makes it 4 feet, my calculation. Because I thought that would be a solution. But when I looked at that, I thought that retention pond would be too close.
Retention pond go to the back?
Yeah, but it shows it there, but the design is not that way. There's not a good drawing with the retention pond. There,
Yeah.
see it?
Yeah.
So the narrow part is alongside the garage.
This is
It's gonna
for,
have to be here. This is gonna have to come out like this. Is the only way to do it, because he's boxed in on the backside by the wetland. So
And-
that's gonna have to fit right in there. And if you do the math, 10 feet and 16, you're out here at 26. And if you rotate that 30 feet, you're 4 feet from the thing, which I think is a little close to the road.
and this is Veronica speaking. It doesn't have to match that exact same drawing as long as we match the depth and the size needed. It doesn't have to be that whole
Yeah.
square piece. So I spoke with staff earlier today and because I had the same concerns, and we determined that a rain garden could still be met if the building was rotated.
If it was what?
If the building was
okay.
rotated, there's still room for a rain garden to be met.
But how far from the road? You don't have room for that the retention pond.
But it doesn't have to meet those exact dimensions
Yeah.
as it states at the top, as long as it has some depth.
Yeah, you can take off 45 square feet, but how would that change that 16 feet? So you made it deeper, you'd take a couple feet off of that 16 feet.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes, please, Eric.
Just
as the board's,
my input in looking at rotating it,
Eric would like to give us some input.
as the board's considering the stormwater plan, the Mississippi Headwaters Board is the one that requires that for variances from the 25% threshold. And they require that the plan address the overage, which is 3.9%. The applicants have presented a plan that would treat more than that, which would treat the whole surface area of the proposed garage.
oh, okay.
So it would be up to this board if it felt that it wanted to see a plan that dealt with more area than that 3.9% overage. If you went to the 3.9%, then it would significantly shrink the size of the rain garden
I
that would be
didn't pick
needed.
that up, that's oversized for what we required. Okay.
Well, it's oversized for what MHB requires, but knowing how the board has viewed these historically, I encourage the applicants, which they did, to size it for the amount of impervious that they themselves were proposing for the lot.
Thank you, Eric. If we don't have any other comments at this time, I'm going to go ahead and open for public comment. And seeing no public comment, I will close public comment.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
This is Mike. Based on that the road is a good portion of the calculation here, I have no issues with the impervious surface variation here. I think the plan it will cover what our concerns are, and I don't see any problems with that. And again, while you certainly could rotate that garage, it appears to me that it gets quite tight then for entering and exiting. So I'm fine with the garage remaining as proposed, based on the fact that it's not going to change what the impervious surface and the runoff, and I think the plan will cover those things.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else have any comments or questions? This is Veronica. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Madam Chair, I guess I concur with Mike that I'm fine with, what I'm seeing here on the management plan. And to rotate it doesn't make sense to me, so I'm gonna be good with what's proposed here.
Thank you, Mark. This is Veronica speaking. I agree with those two as well, that Wolf Lake does account for 14.9% of the lot's impervious surface, and the stormwater management plan is designed to treat that stormwater that comes off the garage roof. I did notice there would be some problems if we did have it rotated. However, I would definitely like to see it reduced. Have you even thought about reducing it at all? I mean, your neighbor's garage meets the 10-foot side setback.
Yep, on one side it does, yep. I have thought about it, but based on what we would like to store in there, I think we need to leave it where it's at.
And you did comment that you're not going to have living quarters upstairs or any septic that brought in no water in the garage at all.
Absolutely not.
I think the other point is, it's garages on both sides, it's not any living quarters at all, and they get, by the footprint, they got about 7.5 feet on each side. That should be sufficient for any maintenance access.
One of the things that I would like to address, this is Veronica speaking, is how do you plan on building up the back end, any fill or anything along that south exterior garage wall? Because you're only allowed so much fill in that wetland. How are you going to build that up? What are your plans there?
Pavers, or
Concrete blocks?
retaining wall blocks, yes.
This is Timothy. I'm leaning towards what you talked about there, Veronica, because board's been pretty consistent about lot line setbacks. And so myself, just at one point, I'm okay with the impervious, but the setback, I think could be met. It's a want to me.
Excuse me,
Turn it
this
or
is
just
Mark.
meet it.
Yeah.
Turn it or meet it.
Yeah, and this is Veronica speaking. The hardest part is answering affirmative to that question number 3. You know, with the findings of facts, is the need for the variance due to circumstances unique to the property? Yes, the uniqueness is because of the lot size and the impervious surface, but the applicant is creating the variance need for the side lot line setbacks.
Yeah. The other thing, they are boxed in by the wetland and the road. If that was one continuous or across the street, it seems to me that physical characteristic is what boxes them in. And that's how I would answer number 3.
This is Brett, if I may comment. When I was a child, I used to walk back to that creek. And before that, it was a hayfield. And now based on the beaver, because Mr. John Olson, who used to trap back there for years, has become full of cattails. And it's really interesting how it's changed. And so I bought the property in 1995. In 2003, the garage was built next to me. There was no cattails back there. So now all of a sudden it's become a wetland, which I understand. So.
Any other questions or comments from the board? We kind of have mixed feelings here. Have you considered rotating the garage to meet the setbacks?
Yes, I have.
And what are your feelings?
I think based on the size that, the dimension that I have set would utilize the most space. Because if I rotate the building, the things that I'm gonna put in there are only gonna be approximately 24 to 26 feet deep. And then there would be wasted space in the middle. You could have storage along all the sides. But the other thought was, if I rotate it, do I need to put a wall up so that I can utilize that space that's wasted in the middle? That's what I've come up with. Because if I have it the way it is, you drive in from the front, it goes deep, and then there's ability to have storage. If you turn it, you drive it in, there's 24 feet, well, then you got all that space in the back. And then there's just wasted space in there. Because that was my initial thought as well, let's just do 28 by 36, and no, that doesn't utilize the space efficiently.
This is Ken. I'm on the same path, I think, that Mike was, that we don't, 7.5 feet on each side leaves room to get around it if you do maintenance. It's garages on both sides. It's not where like somebody's living. We don't gain anything by rotating it at all. Still the same impervious surface. And we move it 30 feet, or not 30, we move it about 8 feet closer to the road, which if you want to park outside the building, the back end of your vehicle is very close to the road. I think the negative
Not
is,
gaining, if you rotate it, you gain, not needing the variance for the setback, right?
right.
But
You-
there's nothing to gain, is what do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
mean by that?
in terms of runoff or anything like that. I mean, it's still the same amount of impervious surface for which they have that retention pond, and you end up moving everything closer to the road. So,
Okay.
I think from a safety standpoint and other things. So,
Anyone prepared to make a motion?
This is Mike. I'll make the motion that we approve.
This is Ken, I'll second.
And I'll go to findings of fact. Is the variance in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls? I'll say yes, because the overall impervious surface stays the same, and the impervious surface has been addressed with a storm management plan. Is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by an official control? Yes, there's garages on both sides, and it's reasonable to have a garage for a home. Is the need for the variance due to the circumstances unique to the property and not created by the current or prior owners? The shape of the parcel, along with the road passing through the middle of it, creates some issues, and with that into consideration, I believe it's the original parcels and not the current owners that drew those parcels up. Will the issue, and then for 4 and 5, I'll accept the staff's findings of fact.
Okay, thank you, Mike. We have a motion by Mike to approve the application as presented and utilizing is that what you also wanted to add, is making sure that you implement the rain garden?
Correct.
Okay, and a second by Ken. Providing findings of facts for answers 1 through 3 and adopting the staff's 4 and 5. I'll take a vote. Tim, how do you vote?
This is Timothy. I'll vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
Mike, I vote aye.
Mark, how do you vote?
This is Mark, I vote aye.
And this is Veronica, I vote nay. Your motion has been approved. You will be getting a letter from the Environmental Services Office explaining to you the next procedure, because it still has to go forward to the Mississippi Headwaters Board, and in your letter, it'll give you a date and stuff for that, so, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is new business, variance application 50-B-23 by the Woodson Property Group LLC, the west half of Lot 5 and all of Lots 6 through 14, Block 4, Highland Park, Section 9, Township 140, Range 33, Nevis Township on Lake Belle, Taine, a recreational development lake, parcels 21.40.02700 and 21.40.04920. Applicants are requesting a variance from Section 904.6 of the Shoreland Management Ordinance to increase the impervious surface area percentage on parcel 21.40.02700 that currently exceeds the 25% threshold. The applicant was first considered at the December 18, 2023 thousand meeting. There, the applicant was tabled and the applicant was instructed to submit a stormwater management plan that would show how all of the existing and proposed impervious surface area on the lot could effectively be treated. An indefinite time extension waiver from the application was submitted on January 8, 2024, as the applicant indicated needing more time to work on the stormwater management plan. Because of the form submittal and no plan having yet been submitted, no action on the application needs to be taken at this meeting, and we will move on to new business. New business. So variance application 56-V-23 by Scot Moores, part of Government Lot 1, Section 1, Township 140, Range 34, Henrietta Township on Boulder Lake, a recreational development lake. Parcel 13.01.02010. Applicant is requesting an after-the-fact variance to exceed the size of the dwelling unit allowed to be constructed by variance 42-V-00. And if we have the applicant, can you please come to the presenters table? Please state your name and address.
I'm Scott Moores, and I live at 21646, County 18 in Nevis.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Morris. Can you please give us a description on your application, please?
Well, first thing what I want to do is I want to address the board and apologize. You know, the last thing in the world that I wanted to happen was this to happen. So, with that said, it was discovered upon the last survey I did that the amount of, the area, including the roof, exceeded the original variance that Eric had helped me get by 0.006% of 1% or 16 square feet. And that was discovered with the survey that was done to establish the natural high water mark in the lake. So I have a question for the board. Do you want me to go into how this happened or why, or just simply state what the request is?
Okay, this is Veronica speaking. You can explain briefly what happened,
Okay.
why you chose 4 feet instead of 1 foot as you presented on your permit.
Okay, well, first of all, the best way to answer your question, it wasn't a choice. Originally, when we put in the foundation for the building, the door was supposed to be at ground level. And there was, maybe 1 step or something. And after it was put in, it ended up being over 4 feet high. And I've had multiple problems with health problems, long COVID, that's really affected my balance. I've had a heart attack, I'm diabetic, I have horrible neuropathy in my feet, and with the foot overhang, it would have created, with a 4 foot high step, it would have created a step that would have been very dangerous for me to navigate. In addition to that, with a 1 foot overhang, the water would have gone down on the steps, and it was a safety hazard. And so that had to be addressed to the point where the only solution was to put in a handicap ramp. And so as the building was progressing, I was the general contractor on it. And the people that I brought in to do the project, I brought one fellow, he did my last cabin up in Woodson, Minnesota, and I had to bring him in from Oregon. And the guy is basically desolate. He lives in the back of a truck with his wife and his 12-year-old disabled daughter. They have no money. The other person that worked on it, I had to bring in from Two Harbors, same thing. The guy essentially lives out of his car. The other two fellows, I don't know their housing situation, came in from Bemidji, and the other guy had to bring in from Roshout, South Dakota. The head guy, the one with the disabled kid, built my last log house in Woodson. And so these people live hand to mouth, and I'm paying them every week. And, I'm in a situation on the log, I rented the lot was built on Darren Jensen's property in a sand pit. And I couldn't get any insurance on the building at all because it was being built off-site. And we couldn't build the building as you've been out to the lot. You see, there's no way we could have the space to construct the building. So, and the estimate that the log builder gave me to build the building turned out to be not accurate. It took twice as long. And the property owner, for whatever reason, started to get frustrated with us. He didn't want us out there. And I'm faced with, what should I do here? I mean, if I stop the project, these people are gone.
Mr. Morris, if I may interrupt for just a second, can you just get to the point, please, where you decided to
What?
alleviate from your 1 foot eve overhang to the 4 feet or 5 foot overhang?
Well, I'm trying to explain that in the simplest way I can. If you
No, just go ahead.
okay, basically what happened was, in order for safety, in order to cover the handicap ramp, we had to extend the roof overhang to accommodate that. And then as the building went on, for symmetry, my log guy says, Scott, you can't have one eave on one side of the house, one length on the other. And so it just it progressed. And as we were building the building, when we were putting the roof together, we discovered that with such a long overhang on the gables, it would not support a 180-pound man. When you went out there and you're walking, it's going like this. So I had to consult what I think was a structural engineer which is now Hilltop Lumber. And we had to essentially rebuild the entire perimeter of the roof using LVLs, which is laminated lumber. And the entire perimeter of the building is built with laminated lumber. And it's doubled up. There's two of them. And that was the only way we could support the weight of the roof. And then also too, we had to cantilever back into the structure for every foot it went out, 2 feet back. So the whole roof is tied together and to make it, sustainable. And so to put that slate up there, there's 29,000 pounds of slate.
Okay, I'm going to ask you another question this time, sir. When you noticed that you had to make some changes to your structure, did you think at any time to contact the Environmental Service Office to amend your permit?
Yes.
And did you contact them?
No.
And what is your reason for not contacting them?
The reason for not contacting them was simply the fact that due to the time constraints of applying, okay, I would have had to stop the project. And if I'm not paying these people, they leave. And as you can see when you were out there, the lead guy, he had other projects that he could go to and he would be gone. And, he can't stop for 6 weeks. My payroll out there was about close to $7,000 a week for these people working. And if I stop, I've got a half-completed building with an unhappy guy that I'm renting with, and I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars out with an uncompleted building. As it was, we barely got the roof on, excluding the slate, by about the 2nd or 3rd of November. I was supposed to be living in the house by September 15th. I didn't get in there till April of next year.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
can I ask a
Yes,
question?
please.
Okay, this is Mark speaking. Question for Eric. Eric, when you issued the permit, is this what you were going off of for building plans, this drawing here?
Let me pull up the permit for you here a second. So this on the screen is the aerial view sketch showing the 1-foot eave overhang proposed.
Eric, could you go back to that for a second? Okay, all right, I see it. And this drawing was submitted by the applicant? Is that
Correct.
correct, Eric? Okay, okay. All right, I hadn't noticed that. So then I'm gonna just direct my question to you, Mr.
Okay.
Moores, is that I saw this in the application. I don't know if Eric has that he can pull up on the screen or not. But it just seems to me, and I think our chair asked you this already, you made changes, and I understand, I was a general contractor, about payrolls and that type of thing, but you made changes and you made decisions, but it doesn't sound to me like you made the decision to inquire as to what that might do to the permit that you had pulled with the 1-foot eave. So I don't know how you can account for it. I'm not sure that you can.
Well, if I have a response, if I may. The original variance that Eric helped me get, my building was, when I was going through this process of what I'm going to do, it was under about 700 square feet under the original variance. So I thought to myself, well, I do have some room here, and as far as how it ended up, because believe me, the last thing in the world that I wanted to do is be 0.5% over.
Right.
Okay? And so I had to let him use his best discretion. It's something where when you build a building like this,
you know, you just have to adapt. It's not like building a regular building. So I thought I had some room there. And so I made the best decision that I felt I needed to make in order to keep the thing going, versus you stop everything because they were gone, and I am really in trouble. I've got $200,000 worth of work out there. I have no insurance in the middle of a field. And knowing the fact and the time that it takes to do this, that was the only choice that I felt I had. And like I said, I'm sorry and I sincerely mean that the amount of stress this has put me under is you just can't, it's killing me, and I can't take it. It's killing me, and I'm just trying to have peace. I was married in May. I have my spouse and our kids with things. And as far as the ability to modify the roof, I don't know what to tell you. It would affect the structural integrity of the roof. And that's all I can say. And I appreciate your question, but that was my thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions at this time?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Couple of things here. You stated you acted as your own general contractor?
Yes.
Did you have an architect, or who drew up the plans? Someone who drew up those plans?
The
for you?
plans were drawn up by the lumber yard in Nevis.
And was that done prior to pulling a permit, after pulling a permit?
It was done prior to pulling the permit.
Okay. That's all I have for now.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and open for public comment. And seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. And do you have any other questions, Mark?
Yeah, this is Mark speaking again, and again, this question is for Eric. Eric, we're aware of other violations on the property, shoreland ordinance violations. Is it appropriate to bring those into this conversation or not? I guess I'm looking for your guidance there.
I wouldn't say in consideration of the variance, but it would be appropriate and something the board has done in the past. If you entertained approving the variance, to place a condition requiring that those other violations be remedied and by a certain point in time, or this variance could be made void.
Okay, so knowing that, and I don't know what the board is thinking here, if something were to go along that line, is it appropriate to inquire to the applicant about those violations or not?
Well, you can't issue a permit when there's violations, right? All those violations have to be corrected satisfactorily before you can issue, or we could confirm the variance. If we approve the variance, the conditions would have to be that by some point in time, he would have to correct all of the other violations that are there. Is that not true? And if he doesn't, the variance would be voided. Is that the process?
Well, the ordinance has a 5-year sunset clause on granted variances in which you have to pull the permit and take action. This is somewhat unique in that it's after the fact. But if the variance would be granted, since the original permit was for a structure with 1-foot eaves, then an amended permit would need to be sought and issued to approve the eaves as constructed. So with that, the ordinance does not allow permits for new things to be issued if there are outstanding violations, but it does allow permits to be issued if they correct violations. So that's where you would want to not rely on the ordinance, but if that was something that you wanted to see, make sure that that occurred, you'd want to specify that in a condition. that you'd want those things taken care of before this permit could be obtained.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mike.
Couple of things here. The applicant surely knew of the shoreline management ordinance, as he had come and asked for a variance that was denied. He pulled a building permit, which clearly stated on it any changes from the permit needed approval. So I'm having a hard time with anything that, even though 16 square feet doesn't sound like a lot, what we have is, in my opinion, is someone knew of the ordinance, got a building permit, was the zone general contractor, worked with a supplier for the design, but yet through all of these things, there was never a red flag that came off to come back to this board or to environmental services to make sure things were right. I understand hardship and once things start, but at some point, the disregard overrides the end result. And to me, I just can't find myself getting to an affirmative on question 3 on the findings of fact. So I have issues.
May I respond?
Certainly can.
Okay. As far as the issue you brought up regarding knowledge of the ordinances of the shoreline impact zone, in my previous property in Woodson, the issues with the crushed rock that I put down.
Sir,
Excuse me?
I understand you're referring to other things, but I'm not sure again how that applies to Hubbard County
I
and
have to-
Hubbard County's zoning ordinance, which to me is very clear on what the requirements are. And if there were questions, to me, it was, I would not fall back on my prior experience. I would go to the county, to the people that administer the ordinance, and ask the questions. So you can go on with your explanation, but I'm having a
understand
hard
what you're
time
saying.
understanding.
I understand that, and I think that's a legitimate thing. Maybe I'm a little bit naive, but I didn't understand that there was different ordinances regarding the shoreline impact in different counties. I did the exact same thing in my prior residence, and there was no issues with Cook County. Now, this is the concern that I have, and if I may, and it's a real concern. I have done everything in accordance with what has been requested to rectify the issues that have been brought up regarding the removal of the rock. The problem that I'm having is that the information that is presented to the board does not reflect the efforts that I've made to do. I have videotape of video on this disc of the rock removal that I've done in the Ark. I hired a local contractor, Kurt Dickinson. We were there for an entire day. I had crews out there with shovels and raking, bobcats. We hauled away truckloads worth of fill. But the reality is with a bobcat, the ground isn't level. And there's only so much you can do. You cannot get every little single piece of rock up. If that is what I'm being asked to do, it's not realistic. Now, what happened was after we got done, when they back drag the ground, it pushes rock into the ground, and I'm going, well, the grass isn't going to grow. So one of the workers said, well, why don't we get a drag, and we're going to come drag this, and that way the seed will take. So we came and dragged it, and all it did was drag up more rock. So, and I'd already seeded it. So I said, well, this isn't going to work. They're not going to approve this. So again, on the 30th, I have them come out and they did the exact same thing. So I've done this twice. But to what standard? I mean, removal of the rock. Nobody from zoning has told me what is the standard. I mean, we're not going to get all the rock up. It's just not possible. You're going to have, right now what we have is once we got done the last time, anytime you get any kind of surface participation, the ground will sink, and it appears that, you know, what's there. What's there is just a single layer of rock, you know, on the property. Now, this spring, I'm gonna do it again. But to what standard? Because quite frankly, it's subjective. And no one from the county has told me exactly. I've taken, even though I had a permit from the DNR for a rock wall, Hubbard County said that wasn't, you know, which I paid for. I took that out. I planted trees. I planted 37 white pine trees in there, and it only reflected 13. Well, the person that went out and did that evaluation did not consider the trees on the right side. So I have done everything I can possibly do, and I've done this in good faith. I did not intend to the last thing I want is a problem. So I can understand your frustration, but as far as the remedy portion of it, I've acted in good faith, and I'm here to give this to the board, because you're gonna see what actually happened versus, you know, it, like I tried not to.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. March.
Could I?
Thank you.
I want to respond. I have a different recollection, because I think I was out there at least twice back when you were looking to build a home. The board was very concerned about even whether it was a buildable piece of property, and we were very concerned because of the closeness to the lake. Okay? We had extensive discussions. You ended up being able to build because of a previous allowance that was back in history, so you were able to build. But the only thing that was in your favor of building at that 65 step back was that you had a lot of vegetation in the shore impact zone, 50 feet. There was lots of discussion about that heavy brush and vegetation was your salvation for being able to build closer than 100 feet. Now, why you don't recall that, and why you don't recall a lot of the discussions about the shoreland ordinance and not altering vegetation in the shoreline impact zone, is surprising to me. I don't want to get into a complex situation, but I think you're twisting things when you say you had no clue or no idea about the shoreland management ordinance not allowing any vegetation removal within 50 feet of the lake.
Well,
So
if I may, sir.
What you've done is egregious.
Sir, but if
Egregious.
I would disagree with that assessment. When I built the building, and I was there, and when I was building the building, there's such limited space. We had huge machinery, okay? We had lifting machines. Those logs weigh tons. Sir, I was there, you weren't. I remember these conversations, okay? I do remember them. And I am addressing them when I am complying with zoning, and I have done everything at this point in my power to address those concerns and remedy them. I have planted these white pine trees along the shore, along that. There is in the area that was affected, just in the area that was affected, there's 13 to 15 trees planted, maybe 8 feet apart. In 5 years, they're going to be growing together. You're not even going to see the
Can
lake.
I stop you? Trees do not prevent runoff. It's ground vegetation
And
that prevents runoff.
Yes, sir.
And that's what you've destroyed.
Sir, I would beg to differ, because that rock that I put down, it actually stabilizes the soil. And here tonight, I was just discussing with my sewer contractor, we're discussing the type of seed that we can put down to have adequate ground cover so that it will prevent erosion. And I also presented to shoreline management already videotapes of water after big storms, and there's no issue with water runoff. What's left on the property actually helps against water runoff versus further removal, because I have to plant substantial hardy grass in there to restore that, and that is my plan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore. I'm going
Okay.
to stop us at this time.
Okay.
And I'd like to move forward a little bit with this variant, this after the fact.
Okay.
I appreciate your information that you've provided us. Please continue to make the proper efforts on restoring and making all your violations correct, okay? To whatever is necessary for Environmental Services Office. This is Veronica again. I have mixed feelings approving this after-the-fact variance application as well, because you did clearly take the time, as you've mentioned, with multiple correspondences made to ESO and with the legal counsel to see what you could build there within the parameters of the variance 42-B-00. Because you've explained to us that you talked to them about multiple house plans, and you found a plan that you thought would fit and had a little extra coverage. 700 square feet was the number that you gave us. You thought you had a little bit of coverage when I asked you your concerns of why you thought you had more eve length than your 1 foot. Okay, so I'm just trying to get to that point. You did specifically ask and apply for the land use permit for the 32 by 52 residential structure with the 1 foot eaves. I'm trying to get to the point to where establishing how you thought that you were covered by this additional, the 1% overage or the whatever percent overage you are for the impervious surface. So, I don't have a problem approving the after-the-fact variance application because it is 16 square feet, but I would implement conditions. Those conditions would be, as described here, the cleaning up your violations by a certain deadline. And if those violations aren't completed to Environmental Services Office's extent to where their satisfaction, then this application would be null and void. I do also understand that in talking with your house plans describing, the plan that you picked a plan that does not have a garage because you wanted a larger house. You picked a plan that does not have a deck. So I just also, if I was to go forward with this, another condition would be that you would not be allowed to have an accessory structure or a deck ever on the property because there's no more room. You don't have any impervious
I
surface.
understand that.
And you've already maxed out what they've given you back in 2000 for that variance that you're working with. You understand those conditions?
Yes, and if I have one question, I need direction from Eric's office as far as I need a definite, what is good enough as far as with these rocks? We're never going to get all of them, but I'm very frustrated because of the amount of effort that I put in. I've done, in this tape, I've interviewed the contractor, and basically I've asked, is there anything else we can do? I mean,
Mr. Moore, that's something that you'll have to contact Environmental Services
Okay.
Office about, exactly
Okay.
what steps, what approach. You might have to
I'm
bring
willing
black
to-
dirt in and start
I'm
all
willing
the
to
way
do
over.
that, but I need a definition of what exactly, at what point, because I don't know what else to do. I mean, I can do it again, but there's gonna be some residual rock left. But I'm gonna compensate that with the type of seed that I'm gonna work with Dave to make sure that Ken's concerns about the vegetation are restored.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Moore. I appreciate
you.
you working and already making efforts to comply with the violations. I would like to get some input from the board members. That's just where I'm at. I have those conditions if I was to go forward with the application.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
As a possible condition is we'll never get back to original vegetation. But it would greatly enhance in my mind if we established a no-mow zone, where it had been revegetated and then has to be left. It can't be mowed and kept open towards the lake.
Absolutely, I don't wanna cut grass.
Madam Chair, if I might, from a practical standpoint, you're looking for what you think are black and white answers to restoring that shoreline to what it should have been in the first place. my advice to you would be, if we go forward with this, would be to work with ESO, and they'll tell you when you've achieved it.
Okay,
That's how I would approach it if I were
Okay.
you.
all right.
This is Timothy speaking. The circumstances unique to this property is that old variance,
Correct.
being an undersized, and got us to this point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The other thing, being in harmony, 16 square feet, I don't believe is gonna change anything, if it was only that we're dealing with, to harm the lake any more than what's there. But it is different the way it is right now. It makes it complicated. So I agree with all the conditions, for sure. Others?
What's missing in the open-ended is what should it look like when he's done in terms of rock removal, vegetation, and so on? I would only add the fact that the original property, now let me try to back up. Our ordinance allows a 20 by 15 shoreline recreation area near your dock.
Okay,
And anything outside of that 20 feet should be vegetation buffer, whatever. Pine trees alone won't do it. It needs shrubs or ground stuff. I would offer the thought that Soil and Water Conservation District has a plant kit, a shoreline plant kit,
okay,
where you can buy a kit that has basically 30, well, they call it plugs, but different varieties of things, about 36 per kit, and it covers about 36 square feet. You're probably never going to be able to fill in the whole 50 feet, but if I had a vision of the future, at least 10 feet of shoreline from the ordinary high water mark shoreward should be in some form of vegetation, because you can look at this picture here, and you can see what it used to look like, all that heavy brush. And I would encourage that as a thought process for your plan, is that 10 feet outside that 20 feet that you can do on either side to the left and right of your dock, that at least 10 feet back from the ordinary high water mark, have that kind of planting, plug plants, which you can buy from Soil and Water Conservation District.
Okay.
They'd even help you.
Okay.
That's a suggestion.
I'm gonna look into that.
Because, well, okay, I'm just offering that as an alternative.
Appreciate that, thank you.
And I don't know how Eric would want to go out about it, but if I was sitting on that side, I'd say, come back to me with a proposal, Mr. Morris, as to what you're going to do. And let me then decide whether that makes sense. I don't know, Eric, how you want to handle this, how, in terms of, because now all I can read is, 5 pine trees and 30 shrubs. I don't know what that means at this point, without a layout, without a, someone like Soil and Water Conservation District or a garden store, or the people, I can't remember, the landscaping people, doing an actual layout that say, all right, this is what I suggest would make sense to get back to kind of what existed, and propose that, and say, all right, sign off on this, so that everybody knows when you're done that that's what you've committed to. So
Well,
don't know, Eric,
I am
what your
committed,
thoughts are.
I am committed to do what it takes to resolve these issues. And what I've got, I was gonna do, I've actually done more than what has been asked me already, and I appreciate that suggestion with the plugs. It's pretty straightforward what needs to be done, and I get it.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Anybody else have any other questions at this time? Any other comments? Okay. Well, this is Veronica speaking. I can make a motion for the after-the-fact variance application. At this time, I would make a motion to approve the after-the-fact variance application only if all other violations are corrected. I'm going to put by July 1st, 2024, to the satisfaction of Environmental Services Office. Otherwise, the application becomes null and void, and that 16 square feet would need to be removed. Okay? Number 2, on the conditions, no accessory structures and no additions to the residential unit are allowed, including decks and patios. And number 3, a no-mow zone. Would that be across with the exception of the 15 by 20 that he's allowed?
Yeah.
Okay?
How far back are you having the mow zone?
How,
Ordinary high water mark?
how far back would you propose?
What's the question?
How far back do you want the no-mow zone?
Minimum of 20.
Well, it should be 50 feet, shoreline payback zone. That's what we typically do. We do, at times, move maybe, under conditions, we've gone at 25, or when we try to mitigate a structure, 20. So I would say is a minimum 25 feet, but 50 is shore impact zone. That's what we should be asking for, I think.
Well, I just want, if I may,
He
I'm
doesn't
sorry.
want to mow anyway, and he's.
No, sir, I'm not gonna mow any grass. It's just gonna, and I planned, I don't know if you had a look when you were out there last week.
No.
Yeah, I know, but you can see the grass that Dave planted on the sewer. It's unbelievable. You know, you can't even tell that there's a mound system there, and that's what I'm gonna put down. But Dave told me one thing, and I just want to bring this up because he said that if you plant that kind of grass, you really should have a little bit of black dirt in there for it to grow. So, you know, with that, I'm going to need to do what I need to do to get it to grow.
Correct.
And so if that's an understanding of the board, that in order for me to make that happen, I have to go on Dave's expertise to do that. And so, that's that. And one other thing, I do have a little teeny fire pit out there. I think you saw that with my picnic table. And I'm not planning on, it'll have, a little bit of area around there. It's by my dock. It's in that 20-foot area that you mentioned, so I don't think that's an issue.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Madam
50
Chair,
feet.
we're gonna go with 50 feet.
Yes.
Yep, okay.
With the 50 feet no-mow zone. And then, so I have findings of facts, questions to answer. Number 1, is the variance in harmony with general purposes and intent of the official controls? I'm going to say yes, allowing the 16 square foot overage with the conditions that all violations must be corrected by July 1st, 2024, or the after-the-fact variance is null and void. No expansions to the residential structure, no additional accessory structures, including patios and decks, and with the no-mow zone. Number 2, is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by an official control? I will accept staff's findings of facts. Number 3, is the need for variance due to circumstances unique to the property and not created by the current or prior property owners? I have that. Yes, the lot was declared buildable by variance 42-B-00 due to the lack of depth to meet the ordinary high watermark setbacks, the road right-of-way setbacks, and the overhead power line setback. The applicant might maximize the footprint, the footprint of the square footage that was allowed per that variance and did not accommodate for the additional overhang causing the 16 square foot overage. Number 4, and I will adopt numbers 4 and 5 of the staff's.
So you've made your motion, Veronica?
Correct. Yep,
Okay,
anybody have a second?
And this is Mark, and I'll second your motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, there was a motion made by myself, seconded by Mark, with the findings of facts for 1 and 3, and adopted 2, 4, and 5. I'll take a vote at this time.
Before you do, Eric, are you comfortable with the level of definition and discussion on what he needs to do to restore the gravel area? Are you comfortable with what we said at this point, that you're able to work with him and achieve what we've tried to designate at this point?
I would say they're clear. The one thing I would say in regard to the third condition with the no-mow zone and black dirt being brought in, that would be limited to what he could obtain with a permit, and if he would exceed the permitted amount, then he would need to seek a variance for any additional material that he'd need to bring in or felt that he needed to bring in. That would be my only note.
Okay. Okay.
We need to add that as part of her condition.
I don't think it's necessary to specify that. It's
Okay.
just a item to note that
Gotcha.
additional variance might be required for that if they felt they couldn't get successful vegetation establishment with the amount of dirt that could be authorized with a permit.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, this is Veronica. I will take a vote. Tim, how do you vote?
This is Tim, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
This is Ken, I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
Mike, I vote nay.
Mark, how do you vote?
This is Mark, I vote aye.
And this is Veronica. I vote aye. Your after-the-fact application has been approved. Please be sure to meet all your violations and correct it at the timely manner.
Thank you,
Yes.
and I want to thank all of you for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Next item on the agenda is variance application 57-B-23 by Gary and Janet York. Lots 1 and 2, Block B, South Addition to Pine Haven Beach, Section 17, Township 139, Range 34, Hubbard Township on Long Lake, a recreational development lake. Parcels 14.38.60700 and 14.38.60800. Applicants are requesting variances from section 501.2, 502.2, 503, 506, 702, 801, and 904.6 of the Shoreline Management Ordinance, and Article V, Section 1 of the Subsurface Sewage Treatment System Ordinance for allowing a proposed guest cottage that exceeds the 700 square foot footprint and a 15-foot maximum height to be placed on a lot that doesn't meet the minimum lot area or with requirements for a guest cottage. Number 2 is a proposed addition for a non-conforming dwelling located in a bluff impact zone that will not meet the 10-foot side lot line setback or the 20-foot road right-of-way setbacks. And number 3, to exceed the 25% of lot area impervious surface area threshold. And number 4, to place a drain field within the 20-foot setback required from a dwelling. And the applicants may come to the presenters table and state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Rich Beasley. Address is 13224 Beach Haven Road here in Park Rapids.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. If you would like to go ahead and give us a rundown of your application, please.
Sure, so can I assume you guys have all seen the application and a lot of the notes? Okay, so I just didn't want to waste your time reviewing what you've already read, but we're just trying to build a garage in addition to the existing cabin we have. It's a cabin that's been in our family for longer than my lifetime. Actually, that's why I married my wife sitting over my left shoulder, because they have this property up here. That's not true, but it was a selling feature. But we've had this place. It's wonderful. We love coming up here. I'm actually looking to retire and be a full-time resident with my wife and enjoy it year-round. But we can't stay up here in the winter with the current property that or the current building we own is just not going to tolerate your severe Minnesota winters. The plumbing's in exterior walls, the plumbing's not deep enough in the ground, the insulation's not adequate. We'd love to build a garage anyway, just to have room to store for dry storage for vehicles and boats and whatnot. And the garage would be a great opportunity to build some living space over it that we could finish in a way that was usable and inhabitable all year, so we could use that in the wintertime. But you heard the long Christmas list of variation requests there. I'm not sure if I need to review all those. You guys have already mentioned those, but I assume as you have questions, I'll hopefully be able to answer them.
All right, thank you, sir.
Sure.
Do any members have any questions at this time?
Is that good or bad?
Well, as you mentioned, this one does have a lot of requests. It does seem to be a little problematic, in my opinion, with several different aspects on the shoreline management ordinance.
This is Timothy. I have a question. I see on the septic design, it's a shallow well at 60 feet from the drain field. Is there a variance for that, or that can be, see, I thought it had to be 100 if it was shallow well.
As I understood, I did need to apply for or put that in the variance. We will be replacing the well. We'll be abandoning that well. It's a sand point.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll be abandoning that and putting in a new submersible well. But as I understand, the location is far enough from the septic field currently. No, it's not.
Not at 60. It's 60 feet on the design.
Once the new deep
Um,
well is drilled, it'll be.
You put it in the same spot, the deep well?
Yes.
Okay,
Be in the same spot.
thank you.
This is Ken. I think if I got that, there's like four things being asked for, so I gotta try to gather. One of them is that the drain field is less than the 20 feet from the building. Is there a basement in the building?
There's no basement.
So Tim, is that problematic if it's 12 feet versus the 20 feet? If it's,
I'd have no concerns with it, especially with the soil description being in sand.
yeah, okay. The other thing is, the cabin's in the bluff impact zone, but the addition to the cabin, it's just that small little section in the back, which is away from the bluff. Is that correct?
As I understood it, with everything, when our property was marked, both by the survey and by ESO office, someone through Eric's staff, yeah, we are not in the bluff impact zone. We are close to it, but we did not cross that line.
So the proposed garage is not in the bluff impact zone. Is that true? You're not doing anything to the cabin.
Correct. We're not doing it in the cabin yet. It's
You're
just
adding that
just the
and
addition. Yep. It'll be the
I can't tell
garage.
from here, and I couldn't tell from out there, but the fact is, the cabin's in the bluff impact zone, so requires a variance, but the addition is not.
Correct. Yep. That would be correct.
Okay, so those two are like, we're all okay. The two issues then, to me, come down to a cottage over 700 square feet, which we, in general, are adamantly against exceeding that. I don't think the lot even qualifies for a guest cabin, so there are several things that are contrary to that. And you're over the impervious surface. And potentially, it's hard to tell in the wintertime, that there definitely is going to be stormwater issues. You already have a berm in front of the cabin, and you're gonna fill that in. There's a stormwater issue. We've tended when impervious surface or when there's a stormwater issue, potential issue, we ask for a stormwater plan before we usually want to progress with the variance. I don't know what the board is thinking, but without some without some plan on how the water runoff is going to be handled under this situation, somewhat reluctant to proceed with approving any kind of variance. So, my
Sure.
comments?
And that, no, I'm sorry, what were you asking?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
I'll respond. So yes, that berm is there. We did have trouble probably 25 years ago, but I know the road's been recut since, and it did eliminate a lot of that. But yeah, we occasionally had water pushing at the front of our cabin or the roadside of our cabin. I did inquire about a stormwater management plan a little bit. I didn't proceed with it, but just some initial conversations I had was, I'm not really going to do anything. Nothing I can probably do is going to inhabit or redirect that water. It's going down that hill into the lake, is it not? Any stormwater that hits that property?
How about to your neighbor?
It shouldn't go to the neighbor. So to the north of us, we have that 30-foot public road. It's heavy vegetation. Most of the ridge line down to the lake is heavy vegetation and trees as well. But our neighbor to the south, we know them. We have a great relationship with them.
So you contend the amount of water and where it runs and where it goes is not affected by this additional garage?
I can't say that without building it, but I don't think so. All the water does still go between our cabin and the neighbors to the south.
How about where the garage is? It was hard to tell what the topography is there. Does the rain that would have soaked in, let's say, where the garage is that now gonna run down over the hill on that side?
On the so between
On
the garage and the
where
cabin?
you're putting the
Yeah, I
garage.
mean, I will put gutters on there to just run everything to the east, to the lake side. I don't know that I would put them in the ground. I think I would just let them watershed on the surface, but there's quite a bit of vegetation there. That picture shows a lot of the vegetation. I mean, it's going to, as I understand it, diffuse and disperse quite a bit, any surface water that's running there. But yeah, it's pretty flat. There's not much, we're not interrupting much vegetation there where the existing shed sits. That will go away. The garage it's 4 times the size of that, but yeah,
It's pretty sparse there, isn't it?
yeah, so we're not removing a bunch of vegetation that's gaining us any watershed or water disbursement or diffusion now. As best I can tell, I'm certainly don't have a degree in that field. However, I'm in the contracting business as well. Last thing I want to do is build something that's going to create problems for me or my neighbor.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Mark. Oh, sorry.
I'm just gonna say the bluff is vegetated, where you go down off the hill.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that previous picture showed quite a bit, or one of them there. There we go. There's quite a bit of, and we don't want to interrupt that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mark.
This is Mark. Question for Eric or anybody who wants to answer. If a stormwater management plan was done, wouldn't one way to capture some of that water be like a rain garden? Wouldn't that be feasible? I'm not an expert on it, but as one way to capture some of that runoff on the lake side.
That or French drains.
Okay.
The main issue you're gonna see is if you get a heavy snow winter, when you've got the spring melt, if it goes off quickly,
Right.
those things don't address that kind of runoff.
Okay. Thank you.
Question with that, so would I need to include in the variance or any of the building permit, adding some French drains or any underground tiles to that, or is that just something, I don't guess I know the answer to that, that's why I'm asking, because I'd love to do more up front than realize after the fact that, hey, we should have done some underground drainage or something here, but yeah, as inexpensive as drainage tile is and French drains, I'd certainly entertain putting those in. Something in between the garage and the cabin now would be wonderful to take some of that water away just for that once a year rain we get.
The issue is, would the impervious surface number be
26.8, I believe.
25. I couldn't remember. Eric, can you
I
remember
think
what?
it's 26.8, 26.6.
We would normally require some form of retention that would make up for that overage, just like we did on the one previously.
Correct.
Okay.
Stormwater management plan would definitely benefit.
This is Tim. Have you looked at trying to acquire any of that property to the north for an alternate for your septic?
I have inquired about it. I actually contacted a local attorney this summer. He is after, I don't know, a month and a half or two of conversation with him, learned he's retiring, and so we severed that relationship. I thought he was on his way out, but no, I've not revisited that. I'm interested in that, but I wanted to try and do this without it if possible, just because that seemed like something that might be a quicker attainable answer. But yeah, I'm very interested to hear any more than anyone's willing to share about that. Or tell me where to call during not in this meeting, and I'm happy to pursue some of that. But anyway, yeah, that I was hoping to not need to do that. I would love to get this project going and then pursue that later if that drags out a little more time. That was kind of the answer I got. Is this one may not be a quick process, but
Have you talked to your neighbor who's on the other side? Would he,
So
she
there-
have any interest in vacating that road?
no, we have attempted over the years, and I forget where they live. There's that 30-foot road, and there's a 50-foot lot. There's nothing on it, and then there are neighbors after that. We've tried to reach out and contact the owner of that property, the 50-foot lot, numerous times over the years, both our property and across the street. We have cousins that have that property as well, and we've never got a response.
50-foot undeveloped lot on the other side of that.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, we've never been able to get a response because we've actually tried to see if we could acquire that property.
Generally, if you try to vacate something, they ask you to split it with your neighbor,
Sure.
with the neighbor.
And that's the way I understood it. The answers I got were we can certainly chase that. I've tried to talk to as many people as I can. I live in Illinois, so it's harder for me to know the common
What they'll
practices.
do, this is Tim speaking, is they'll do a public notice, and if they don't reply in a certain amount of time, then it's before a judge, and
Right, and we're not talking the 50-foot lot. What we're talking is that 20-foot right-of-way that's
30 foot.
unbuildable because it is a right-of-way.
30-foot.
30
It's
foot.
a 30-foot, rather, what it would
Sure.
be.
Right,
The
we're
only
not
thing is get a
talking
lawyer to
property.
work on it.
30 foot.
They've done those things, they do those things, yeah.
Sure, and I would love to have that, just to have more room and be able to park a boat trailer there. I learned at some point, I got answers that, the county may consider doing that, and then I've heard people say, you'll never get that done, so I don't know which to believe or which effort is, if it's a worthwhile effort, to be honest with you. I knew this meeting had to happen for the building to even have a chance, and so that's why we're sitting here. But, yeah, I'd love to pursue that further.
No, Township hasn't taken it over, so it'd be with district court.
He got a lawyer, he'd have no trouble getting that vacant.
Okay, if there's not any other questions or.
Madam Chair?
Yep,
My biggest concern here is just the sheer size of the lot, and then you add into the bluff area. We're dealing with a lot that isn't even, maybe it's a fourth or a third, rather, of what we require in the ordinance. And the other part is that we've been fairly consistent, I believe, very consistent on substandard lots and guest cottages and not allowing guest cottages at all, let alone over the 700 square foot minimum. So just based on sheer lot size here and what's being tried to be put into this small space, and you talk about lot line issues then, drainage, water management plans, I'm just having a hard time going forward with this as requested.
okay, thank you, Mike, for your input. At this time, I'm going to open for public comment. And being none, I'll close public comment. And this is Veronica speaking. I have similar, as stated earlier, I have similar concerns, the same. The lot is quite small for this request. 60% of the required minimum lot width needed in order to place the guest cottage on the lot. Also, the maximum height size is only 15. I believe the request is 26, since it's going to be over a garage. The other concern that I have is your septic, is if you utilize that space, then you won't have anywhere for an alternate septic location.
Actually, I'm sorry, are you suggesting we won't have a place to do the new septic system?
No, not so much the new one, but an alternate site later down the road.
Gotcha.
Different alternate site. But- Do I have any other comments from the members?
This is Tim. I agree with Veronica. I've repeated it before. It's not if it's gonna fail, it's when, and probably not in our lifetime, but someday.
Sure. So can I respond to just those few comments? I'll try to be quick. I know it's later than most of us would prefer to be here possibly, but, so the lot size is smaller. Correct. If we were to build within all the requirements, the code requirements, I think we get about a 2.5 foot strip down the middle of our property that we can build on. Clearly, I know that's not the expectation, but, we are left with 92 feet in those two lots. I guess I would just maybe ask for a little grace there. We did do our neighbors to the south a favor 50 years ago. We sold 8 feet because when they started their project and their cabin, they built across the property line rather than ask them to tear it down and maintain our space. We graciously, and I shouldn't take any credit. My in-laws took credit. They were the gracious ones there. But so yeah, we've been very kind to our neighbor. I don't feel encroaching on that lot line to the north. We're not impeding anyone with that 30-foot road there. We're not crowding anyone. We're not getting up close to anyone's property or anything like that. And if we had our 8 feet or 9 feet that we sold back 50 years ago, we'd actually be within about 1.5 foot of that 10-foot setback if it were private property. I know the 20-foot road requires a 20-foot setback. That would also get us under our 25% impervious surface requirement. And so I know it's an odd request. I also know, I don't remember the reasons why this is considered a guest cottage. We're never going to treat it as a guest cottage. We're just treating it as an addition to our cabin. That's the reason for the second kitchenette and that. So, not that matters on the square footage, but we don't intend to use it as a guest cottage. I would have never even thought we needed to call it that until it was explained to me that just this style of addition will be treated that way, at least on paper.
I didn't understand what you were talking about. You sold some of your property?
Sure.
On which side, the south side?
So the south side, yeah, they were two 50-foot lots. The southern lot now is only 42 feet. We sold 8 feet back at the beginning of my lifetime to our neighbors to the south. When they built their cabin, they came across the property line 8 feet.
The south is on the bottom of this drawing.
Correct. And so they have a zero setback to the south of us, which is why our cabin is built further to the north than we would have preferred to build it, which now is pushing that garage up to almost a zero setback at the north property line.
There's kind of a sense that this is almost too much for this size of lot. And definitely the guest cottage doesn't fit the requirements. And we all have our eye on that 30 feet to your north. I'm thinking out loud here, would it be appropriate to defer this or what's the word we use? Table this and give you opportunity to pursue getting that Grandview Road vacated and attached to your property?
I'm interested in doing that.
It would make
Can I answer that this way?
It
I would love
it-
to, go ahead.
It would make me feel more comfortable in terms of the amount of property you have to put all the stuff on it that you want to put on it. And I think I've heard from my colleagues that, the drain field setback and your impervious surface issue would go away, and so on. It's not that horrible a process if you get a lawyer to do it. I've been through it.
The projected
Okay?
amount was gonna be about a
I've
$4,500
been through it.
out-of-pocket
I've been through it
expense.
on my property when I bought it years ago. They had to vacate a road because the previous owner had built half the garage on the road, so.
So that would likely gain me, what, half of that, so 15 feet?
Typically, they ask you, but you could have the argument, you could make the argument that 50-foot side on the other side, if you get no response, you could make the argument to want to vacate all of it, and
Well, the
then they'll set a
50
price,
foot's,
they'll set a price for what you have to pay for it.
the 50 foot is private property, it's owned.
What?
The 50 foot is private property, it's owned by,
No, what I'm saying is that typically when they vacate something like that, they split it down the middle, but you
so it'd
might
be
have
30 foot they'd be vacating.
yeah, you get 15 feet.
Okay.
But you could maybe make the argument that it should be all, no, if he's not interested,
Sure,
that you would do it. A lawyer could do that,
sure.
and they would know the process. Maybe going beyond what we should be doing here, but
Sure. I'd love to not pin that on the progress of this potential project, just not knowing how long that process is gonna take, or knowing if, I've gotten mixed feedback to, I've been told Hubbard County has the authority to vacate that because it's still owned by Hubbard County,
no, I think a judge does. He has to go to court.
and I've heard that as well. But I've probably heard more that it's Hubbard County that has to vacate that because it's still owned by the county. It's just not maintained by the county. And I'm speaking only secondhand here, but yeah, I've gotten a lot of runaround on how to go about that.
Well,
They have to agree to it, and they would sell it to you if they agreed to vacate it, if they never thought they wanted any.
And yeah, if you saw it, I mean, it's not usable. No one's going to access the lake down that bluff. It's just inaccessible. But
this is Veronica speaking. That's something that you might pursue then. Check with Hubbard County first and then go from there and see what guidance they give you as far as that goes. Moving forward, again, I'm just going to put this out there for the members here. I am not in favor of the application. If there's some of you that would like to table it to give the applicant time to provide a stormwater management plan, we could look into that. However, I'm still in agreement with the staff report as far as the answers for number 2 and number 3. The proposal is too large for this lot. The lot contains a little over a quarter of the lot area and 60% of the required minimum lot width needed in order to place the guest cottage. Again, I am like Mike. We have been pretty significantly sticking to our 700 square foot guest cottage. I think maybe the applicants, if they did a direct addition to their house, they might have a different outcome since this situation causes that guest cottage problem. Again, even with the very steep bluff on the lot, it does make it unique. We have lots of setbacks that can't be met, and that makes the lot even smaller. It's just undersized for the amount of proposal that they want. And again, I'm open and want to keep room for the future septic drain field needs. So that's where I stand. Is anybody prepared to make a motion?
Well,
Madam Chair, just for the record, so you know, I've recused myself from this.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Yes.
Before we proceed, should we give him the option of tabling it? Open-ended table and give him time to check on that Grandview Road? Because otherwise, it seems like the consensus is denial.
Madam Chair, even if he were to get that additional 15 or possibly 30 feet, we're still dealing with a substandard lot, and we're still dealing with a guest cabin that's over, and we've been sticking to that. So while we certainly could go down that road, I'm not sure that would change my opinion that this lot is just too small for what's being proposed.
Yeah.
But if he would back off on the guest cabin, but still want the garage, just come back with a proposal for the garage, he would have solved the impervious surface. We would probably approve the garage, since it's reasonable. And the other things, follow what I'm saying, if you got that property,
I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah.
I'm still not able to get there.
okay,
And this is Veronica speaking. I understand as well. At this time, I believe the clear-cut way is if he wants to do any major amendments and taking out the living quarters and so on, it'd be best just to apply for a new application, a new
Okay.
variance
yeah,
application.
okay.
Well, and that doesn't gain me, I want full year residence, so that's where I'm trying to, that's what I'm trying to create there, is a full year, a place I can occupy year round.
I'm sorry,
What I'm trying to gain there is I'm trying to create a space I can occupy full year. The existing cabin is not winter inhabitable.
okay.
Madam Chair, if you're ready, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay. Mike, proceed.
This is Mike. I make the motion that we deny the application.
Are you going to adopt the staff's findings of facts?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have a second? Okay, this is Veronica. I second the motion. Mike made the motion to deny the application and adopt the staff's findings. I second the motion. I'll take a vote. Tim, how do you vote?
This is Timothy, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
Mike, I vote aye.
And Mark, you're abstaining. This is Veronica. I vote aye. The application has been denied 4-0.
So are you interested in the stormwater?
You do not have to seek the stormwater management plan at this time unless you decide to fill out another additional variance application that has to be different than this one. Otherwise, you have to wait a year. But if you have a different that's significantly different, and that will be determined by the Environmental Services Office. If you do apply for a different variance, I would highly suggest, if it has anything to do with exceeding the 25% impervious surface, to have a stormwater management plan with it by a certified Minnesota stormwater person or a licensed engineer.
Okay,
Okay?
okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is miscellaneous. Do we have any miscellaneous?
Nothing miscellaneous for the board, and then if I can move on to communications, we do have applications for the February meeting agenda, and I know some of you have indicated, not, or having travel plans that you won't, be here for that meeting, so I just want to see if we can discuss that and get that, documented, because it could affect whether we have a quorum for that meeting.
Okay, well, this is Veronica, or next month I will be here. Tim, will you be here?
I'll be gone.
You will be away. Ken,
I'll be
will you
here.
be here?
Yeah.
And Mike, will you be here?
No, I won't.
Okay, and
I
Mark?
have some news for you all. I'm resigning as of tonight, so I won't be here after this. So I'll miss you all so much.
Sorry.
I can't even, I don't even want to talk about it. But I've been thinking about it for a while, and I just thought it was time for me. So I'm moving on, and that might affect Eric's need for board members.
It's been a pleasure, Mike.
Yes, it has been a
It's
pleasure.
I can't even express how much I
Yeah.
respect all of you and working with you, so thank you so much for putting up with me
We're
and,
gonna miss you.
We are.
Can't you hang in there till we find a replacement?
well, I'm gonna talk to Shar, I have not talked to her yet, and, we'll see what she says. If push came to shove and she really felt like that were, something that she needed, I might oblige her in that regard for a month maybe, so, yeah.
So it doesn't appear that you may not have a quorum for next month, so there will be no meeting then.
No, we'll have to notice applicants of that fact and that they'll have to be heard in March.
How many applications are for next month?
We have one for sure, possibly two, but the application deadline is next Monday, and
Okay.
the majority of them always wait until the final day to turn things in, so
I'm just trying to think if it's only a couple, and if Mark would hang in there for a month, we could have the meeting and get it over and get it off the ledger.
we'll have to see.
That
We'll
would
let,
be desirable.
we'll let him visit with Shar and see
Sure.
where that
Get
goes.
back with us. Okay.
That's all that I have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
This is Veronica. I did mention this to staff earlier, that I think as the Board of Adjustment members, that during the next shoreline management ordinance amendments process, that we would propose to the county board that any variance requests that exceed 25% impervious surface would require a stormwater management plan from a licensed engineer or Minnesota stormwater certification as part of the variance application. Seems as though we're hitting lots of those, and then we're tabling it to get, this information, and it should be done right off the bat.
Good
So
idea.
that's
Yep.
just something I would propose.
Okay, when you say the 25%, is it 25% in the shore setback zone or for the entire piece of property? It's always been a stickler with me, because if someone's 60% impervious within the first 100 feet, and then's got 3 acres in the back, that totally misses the whole intent. And in my mindset, always, the 25% is in the shore setback zone. We might want to clear that up
Right,
when we
yes,
do that,
because to
okay?
my knowledge, it's the entire lot, so it's the
Yeah,
impervious 25%.
and that misses the whole point. We've been through a few of those where there've been over density by a lot. And the whole idea of the 25% is runoff. And it's that first 100 feet that's the issue with the runoff. So I would say if we do that, we
that-
might want to clear that up.
Yep, and that would
Okay.
be additional content that would need to be addressed. So
Okay.
I agree too. So, okay, anybody ready to make a motion to adjourn?
This is Timothy. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Mike, I'll second.
Okay, Timothy made a motion to adjourn. Mike seconded the motion. Tim, how do you vote?
Tim, I vote aye.
Ken, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mike, how do you vote?
It's Mike, I vote aye.
Mark, how do you vote?
This is Mark, I vote aye.
Veronica, I vote aye. Meeting adjourned.